The only stories we hear from Mexican cartels are stories led by men. Number 10. Mrs. El Chapo Joaquin. El Chapo Guzman is the most famous and internationally renowned cartel lord ever, second only to Pablo Escobar. Which begs the question, what kind of person would marry such a man and remain by his side no matter what? The response is a little unhusband. Cornell, a natural beauty, entered the Miss Sinaloa beauty contest when she was 17. Her father introduced her to the then 50-year-old El Chapo, and the two consented to marry that day for unknown reasons. Even after his arrest, Mrs. El Chapo has remained steadfastly by her husband's side since that disastrous beauty competition. According to the FBI, Coronel Aispuro assumed her husband's previous job. At the same time, he was imprisoned, including passing signals to Sinaloa's leadership, conspiring to sell drugs, and even assisting in El Chapo's notorious yet brief escape from prison in 2015. Coronel has fallen from grace after living the abundant life of a drug lord's wife. In late 2021, she was detained on allegations of attempting to distribute heroin, cocaine, marijuana, and amphetamines, as well as money laundering. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Number 9. Execution cell in JNGC, Mexico's second largest and most infamous drug cartel. While it is not uncommon for a woman to have such a position in the narco-trafficking world, La Catrina had to prove she was even more dangerous than the males around her. Maria, who was born in the late 1990s, was a good student. However, during her teens, she was gradually attracted to narcotics and fell in love with a Jalisco new generation narco named Miguel Fernandez, or M2, through them. She left her village of Tepalcatepec in 2017 at 18 to start a new life as a cartel woman in Aguililla, Michoacán. As commander of the JNGC Death Squad, La Catrina was responsible for assassinations, extortion, and kidnappings. In her most infamous occurrence, La Catrina's cartel unit attacked local Michoacan police, killing 13 officers. La Catrina's final moments were captured on video by one of the police officers she had just tried to assassinate. The Pacific is one of the world's most famous and successful female narcos. Unlike La Catrina, Sandra did not have to marry into the drug industry. She was born into it. She was also born into Mexican narco nobility. Beltran is the niece of the guy known as El Jefe de Jefes and El Padrino, the boss of bosses and the godfather of Mexican drug trafficking, according to officials. Sandra Villa Beltran had everything she could ever want from birth: private dance lessons, private tutors, and unlimited excursions to Disneyland and SeaWorld. As a child, she was so used to being around stacks of cash that her party trick was to grab a handful of dollars and guess their value to the nearest 100. Of course, becoming a narco royalty comes with its own set of risks. When she was 13, the Queen of the Pacific witnessed her first firefight, and she was attacked in 2002 when armed assailants encircled her car. Sandra barely escaped with her life, but not before. She was known to stroll about with briefcases full of $1 million in crisp $100 bills, and she once came in a helicopter with an AK-47 at an exclusive gathering for Mexican authorities, celebrities, and narcos. Despite being a high-ranking member of the infamous Sinaloa cartel, with links to Colombia's Norte del Valle cartel, the Queen of the Pacific has no regrets about her life of crime and violence. Instead, she is rightfully proud of having risen to the top as a woman in a world dominated by men. Number 7. La Flaca. Other than her horrible fate, little is known about Gulf Cartel assassin Jocelyn Alejandra Neo, aka La Flaca. When authorities found what was left of Neo's body, identifying her only by the tattoo on her forearm, there wasn't even enough evidence to confirm her age. However, it's believed she died in her late teens or early 20s. Jocelyn Alejandra Neo was the third and most current narco. The tradition of training young girls to become hired gunmen appears to be expanding. Neo was in charge of repelling intrusions into Gulf territory by competitors Los Metros as a member of the Gulf Cartel's paramilitary faction, Los Ciclones. She had probably only been in charge of this task for 4 months before Los Metros kidnapped and murdered her. La Flaca's tragedy was unfathomably cruel. She was severely tortured before being executed by headshot. Number 6. La China. You do not often come across someone deemed too vicious, even by narco standards, but that's exactly who Melissa Margarita Calderon Ojeda, aliases La China, was. Buckle up because this female narco story is disturbing. La China, born in 1984, became a member of the Damasco Cartel, a Sinaloa affiliate. La China soon rose through the ranks due to her unrestrained aptitude for violence and intimidation. La China, who was frequently photographed after joining the drug trade, contributing to the tripling of homicide rates in Baja Sur, California during her tenure. When the Sinaloa cartel's boss attempted to depose La China as commander of Damasco's militia, she broke away and founded her cartel, Las Fuerzas. In command of over 300 armed soldiers and dealers, La China declared war on her erstwhile comrades, transforming the Mexican city of La Paz into a battlefield. Her luck, however, soon ran out. La China's crazed behavior proved too much for the men around her. El Chino, La China's partner and second in command, had had enough after actually ripping off her right-hand man's arms. He handed her up to the cops. Today, the bloodthirsty female assassin known is imprisoned in Mexico's #1 maximum security jail, accused of over 150 killings. Number 5. Griselda Blanco, the Queen of Cocaine. Griselda La Madrina Blanco was one of Miami's most feared drug. What is certain is that Griselda Blanco rose to prominence as a human trafficker in the 1970s. Then, in the 1980s, she became a key figure in the Miami drug warfare. She made countless enemies throughout Colombia and the United States during her reign of terror, and she would go to any length to get rid of them. Griselda Blanco was one of the deadliest women in the Colombian cocaine trade. From shopping center shootings to drive-by motorbike hit squads to house invasions. She was suspected of being responsible for at least 200 homicides and possibly as many as 2,000. Griselda Blanco appreciated the best things in life, despite her harshness. She owned a Miami Beach estate, diamonds from Argentina's First Lady Eva Perón, and a billion-dollar fortune. Not bad for someone who grew up in a low-income area of Cartagena, Colombia. Born in 1943, Griselda Blanco began her criminal career at a young age. She allegedly kidnapped a 10-year-old boy where their firm flourished. They had a direct route to the white powder in Colombia, which took a significant portion of the business from the Italian mafia. This was when Blanco earned the moniker, the Godmother. But everything came apart in 1975. Blanco and Bravo were apprehended as part of Operation Banshee, the most significant cooperative NYPD DEA sting. Number 4. Sebastiana Cotton Vasquez. Sebastiana Cotton Vasquez is a Guatemalan woman who rose from an impoverished peasant child in Malacotton to the top of her criminal organization, gaining her a reputation as a fierce ruler within her country's drug trade. She was known as Doña Tana and had ties to the Digna Valley cartel in Honduras. She also had strong links in Colombia and functioned as an intermediary for El Chapo's Sinaloa gang. Guzman Vasquez utilized her connections to carry drugs and money from Colombia to Guatemala, where they were then moved to Ladonia, who was ultimately identified as Vasquez herself. The investigation discovered that she had smuggled 40,000 kg of drugs from Venezuela and Colombia to North America. Number 3. Clara Elena Laborín. La Señora authorities captured Clara Elena Laborín, a former beauty queen from Sonora State who had married Hector Beltran Leiva, El Chapo's longtime Sinaloa gang collaborator, in 2016. As her husband treated her like a trophy wife, Laborín is known as La Señora, or the Mrs. Laborín was hired to oversee the money laundering operations of her husband's Beltran Leiva cartel. In 2010, she was kidnapped by a rival organization and photographed in captivity, blindfolded and tied, with automatic guns pointed at her. She was released after 13 days and returned to oversee the cartel's finances. When her husband was jailed 4 years later, Laborín took over the cartel, starting one of Acapulco's, the female El Chapo. Everyone in the Guatemalan border town of Pedro de Alvarado knew and feared the sisters Mayra and Marixa Lemus, who controlled the country's narcotics trade in 2011. Marixa's brother Magno was mayor until he died of a heart attack in 2009, so it was a family affair. Marixa's sister Mayra was concluding her term when she was slain. Marixa ran for mayor instead of her sister in 2011, but lost to Carlos Marroquin. And things became even worse for La Patrona, when she was sentenced to 94 years in jail in 2015. 6 former police officers were also apprehended for involvement in Marixa's gang, but her infamous career was far from ending. In 2016, she tried an escape by jumping over the prison wall with the assistance of other inmates, but she was apprehended shortly afterward. The following year, dressed as a security guard, she attempted another escape from a military prison. When officials tracked her down, aka La Jefa was the first woman to ever lead an entire narco gang. The Arellano Felix brothers ran the powerful Tijuana cartel throughout the 1990s, with their baby sister Enedina serving as one of a staff of accountants. La Jefa, on the other hand, was far more ambitious than her brothers gave her credit for. While the guys of the Tijuana cartel were off grilling bodies and sparking turf wars against their competitors, Enedina was quietly but steadily working her way up the organization's ranks. Enedina took over the cartel's money laundering operations in 2000. Then, in 2003, she firmly established herself in the inner circle of leadership. Enedina sat quietly, intelligently, and patiently in the wings as competing cartels or the authorities killed her 6 brothers. Finally, in 2008, she took complete control of the Tijuana cartel, becoming the first woman to formally and independently manage a global